My Heart and Mind to the Hāfu podcast, which invites you and people from all walks of life to converse about various access to equity within the context of Aotearoa. We invite you and our beautiful, intelligent guest today to share lived experiences in an effort to identify common threads within support systems, social networks, and knowledge that uplifts the collective human experience. Kelsey, what's our season 2 question?
This season, we are exploring what does equity in knowledge look like for various communities coexisting within one society. As tauiwi in Aotearoa, we recognise the mana whenua and kaitiaki of these lands. Malucio and I have experienced most of our growth in the Waikato and want to honour Ngāti Hawa, Ngāti Mahana and Ngāti Wairere. We're grateful for the connections our whakapapa weave through for us to be able to connect and grow with community through the whāku kaupapa. Malucio and I would also like to honour our queer ancestors who fought for our rights and visibility as equitable citizens of the world. Kia ora, my name is Kelsey and I use they, them pronouns.
Noa ngata koa, Tuasa Malucio Joseph Talane Monisi. Hello everybody, my name is Malucio Joseph Talane Monisi. And I'm comfortable and people use he, him pronouns for me. And without further ado, we're going to hand you over to our guests because you already know the kaupapa. We don't like to talk for people. We like to give people to voice their choice. So please, if you could introduce yourself, your pronouns, and whatever else comes after that.
Kia ora, e te whanau, ko Leslie Ho, ke ototahi tōku kainga. So I am currently in the lovely place of Christchurch at the moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what's your pronouns? So what are you comfortable with?
My pronouns is she, her, but pretty much don't be a dick.
Love that.
I love that pronouns. Yeah. I love those pronouns. All right. And then, so tell us, how did we meet from your perspective? We want to know, how did we meet?
How did we meet? Well, I'm not sure of like the timeline of who I met first. So I met Kelsey through Rainbow Warriors, the softball team in Kirikiroa, which I think we played together for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Or so. Yeah. You were a baby back then.
I was.
Right, yeah.
It was a few years ago now.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And then Malu, I think I met you. You came like as a cyclone through my office, and you were just like, "Hi, I'm Joseph. I do recruitment. I like to play basketball. You play basketball?" And then you just, as you came like a hurricane, you left like a hurricane, and then I probably didn't see you for like 2 years. But then we made like a connection with Kelsey, I think, right? And then once, yeah. And then I guess like I saw both of you doing different things. Yeah, for a while, just like from afar, being like, wow, look at those beautiful people doing their things, evolving.
Yeah.
Breathing.
Existing.
Pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it for you, Kelsey, then?
Wow.
Where
I actually remember, and I think I shared this with you, Leslie, last time I was in Ototahi, is that I actually saw you like 2 years or 3 years before I met you. And I saw you walking through the building going to like the other room. And I was like,
yeah.
Homo. And I was telling my friends that I was working with at the time, I was like, that's a homo. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah. I was like, they're cool. I want to be friends with them. 2 or 3 years later, now we're friends. Like, we were friends. That was a while ago now. But like, that was probably 2015, maybe?
Wow.
Yeah. And then I didn't know you for a...
So like a duck, like the quack quack for you, it was like homo. Really?
Because where I was working...
What vibes was I giving? Was it my walk? My purposeful walk?
Yes. Yeah. The walk, the Converse and the blazer.
Yeah, and the blazer. It is kind of a uniform,
Yeah.
of like business casual.
Yeah.
Trying to still maintain your identity of not being a professional, I think. Hey, like that balance.
Loved it. And then a couple of years later, we met through softball, like properly, and connected that we were working at the same place. And then Malu obviously came through as well. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Mm.
And for you, Malu, what was it like on your side? I haven't heard your perspective before.
So I've been stalking this bitch at work for ages. Like when I say for ages, I see her like the mahi walk was just so good. Like when I say it is distinctive, it is distinctive. Like in my head, I'm like this. And the first thing that came to my mind, I'm like this, sorry. Oh my God, who is that? Like we're gonna be friends, but who is that? And we never crossed paths. So like I remember like this in recruitment and in the specific department I'm in, I am in every center kind of thing, or I'm at least connected to every center. I still did not meet you in any of my meetings or any of this. And I'm like this, who the hell is this person?
Right.
And anytime, and that's why when I finally found out your name, like this is 2 years later. Like I feel like in 2016 was when I started working in this company.
Yeah.
2018 was like I don't know when it was, but I feel like it was a long time later was when I actually found your name. And I'm like, I'm gonna go and say hello in your department. And because I saw you playing basketball in my head, I'm like this, oh my God. And the reason why I was so like hard on for basketball and you was because I'm like this, I want to get back into basketball, and I don't know a social team that I want to play. We sometimes go on Tuesday or Thursdays, and I'm like, girl, you need my hide, and I need to get exercise. So
and so that's the thing. I gave you like an open invite. I was so excited, and then crickets. I was like in the basketball like area, just doing free throws, waiting for you, and no one was coming.
It's because I was busy, okay? I'm busy.
So excited to see me, and then like empty promises like a father too busy to be with their kids on the weekend.
Welcome to your male. I was just trying to like remind you of the male trauma like that exists in your life.
Oh my God.
Exactly. I was just like, where's my basketball daddy? But anyway. It was true like that. Because I mean, both of you guys had a really strong impression for me. And then like, because you know what? I think now that I think of it, I knew of your work, Kelsey. Like I knew of the photos that you were taking for your thesis. Is that what it's called?
Program. Yeah.
Because I knew someone that was in it, and then I was like, oh, it's this person, and then so I think that also was like a recognition. And was it like who was that? I can't remember, but there was someone in like the CFL connection, the language connections that was in your work.
Yeah, because that was 2016, and I'd noticed you the year beforehand.
Oh wow! Okay.
But Malu was in that. Malu was in that project.
Yeah, no, and I remember seeing that photo too, being like, "Oh, who's this delicious little thing?" It's like the one that left me for someone else at the basketball court, but it's okay.
Oh yeah, I'm curious to know who that was now, but we can have that conversation offline.
Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Kelsey, you want to leave?
Yes. So what we're here for, other than a catch up. We are curious.
Kind of like that, yeah.
So obviously this season we're talking about knowledge and equity in knowledge, but before we jump into that, we understand that knowledge often is a word that people use but can talk past each other on. So we're curious, what is knowledge to you? When we talk about knowledge, what does that bring up or resonate for you?
So I was thinking what that word means, and this kind of the origin of it. And also in different languages. So for me, I just kind of instantly thought, what does it mean in Japanese, which I also speak. I'm half Japanese. And so the word is chishiki, and chishiki is knowledge, but it's also of awareness. And so I kind of like that way of positioning it, of like awareness of things that you see see things that you witness to, things that you learn, that awareness that you maybe didn't have before. And so in that's kind of how I like to kind of see it. And with more knowledge, that I guess through time, through going through school and then going through different types of work and then like meeting different people, I think that for me, knowledge is definitely co-constructed.
Ooh.
So
How so? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, tell us more. What do you mean?
Like, so everything to apply meaning or understanding isn't kind of like isolated on its own. So to be able to understand what you see, there's always someone there to either teach you or bring to attention or created it. Or when you're learning about something, you're in a classroom or you're with people trying to make sense of it, of what you're being exposed to. And then in that construction, then it leads to more different ways to process what you're being exposed to. And I find that co-construction leads to negotiation of knowledge and meaning. And that's kind of how I kind of make sense of it. But within knowledge or acquiring knowledge, I do think that as I go through the world, the longer that I'm here, the less I know. And that, you go into, like for me, what I do love to go to, and in Ototahi, there's an awesome library called Turanga. And in that library, when I go in there, I'm just like, this is just like a wealth of knowledge and history. And I will never in my whole life be able to go through all of the, books and periodicals and whatever that's in here. And in that, I find that really comforting and discomforting at the same time, that in my lifespan, I'm not going to be able to know as much as I want to. So, yeah.
That is so important. That is so important.
Yeah, so that's kind of what, to kind of, hopefully I answer that question, but yeah, that kind of way of like making sense of what you are learning and how you can apply it. For me, it's definitely in that construction with others. Like, I don't think it could be isolated. And then I think about the key points of like the things that I can retain or recall or anything has always been with others. Like, and that's how I can remember certain things.
Yeah. When you talk about with others, what does that look like in action?
Like in action, so I think now, because I'm primarily, I'm a teacher, so I guess I'm in a space where I'm supposed to now expose concepts and frameworks and ideas to students. But as I'm teaching, I realize that I need to really position the classroom, or now online, because lots of it's online, or the interaction of like, instead of saying, this is what you know, learn it, regurgitate it, here's a test, it's kind of like we come to a place of like, how much do you know of this? What do you know about it? What comes to mind about it? What is something relatable about maybe an abstract concept, like love or sadness or, those kind of things. Can you find an example, or can you, what's your background of it? What's your relationship to it already? And then in that, I'm able to realize or to have a classroom that's not centered about me in the middle, teaching people. It's more like having a real kind of like spontaneous, but also planned way of getting all of the knowledge that students already have, because that's every time I think that, someone is presenting a certain level of ability or aptitude, if I make that judgment, in a process where we keep it much more open and much more open-ended, I see that there is so much more understanding about certain issues than I might have given credit before that. So just reshaping the way the classroom looks.
I love that. Loved all of that, actually. That resonates really well.
Yeah.
Because literally, because to me, do you think that, well, how do you deal with the conversation around the learning that happens in classrooms versus learning that happens outside of classroom? Because I feel like you just talked to that a little bit around students already coming to class with a body of knowledge already attached to them. Can you just ice that out for us a little bit more?
I guess, a lot of, the way the classroom now is, or at least in my field of language teaching, language acquisition, a lot of the concepts or say grammar points, for example, we have videos, we send it out to the students, they watch it, and so now some practitioners call it flipped classroom or whatever, but then you come in and you're ready to just do stuff, right? And so in that, when we get into the classroom, it's kind of like every student, and especially in the second language classroom, everyone comes from really different countries, different backgrounds and educational qualifications and all of that, and value of learning or value of being a student. So all of that stuff is happening. So you're trying to now be aware of all of that, and then think about what's the best way everyone learns, and everyone is different. And so how do you get all of that awareness and then make a lesson that everyone finds that there's a takeaway, everyone got something out of it. And so the way in which I'm doing it now, which I'm sure will change and morph into something else different, is to just have a real quick gauge on where everyone is at, how much they know already. And so once they demonstrate it in different ways, maybe a discussion or a short quiz, or I'd like to do a recall, like what did we do a week ago, or what was the videos about? Okay, do a brain dump, bang, put it on a piece of paper. And then once I go around the room or online, I can see typically, and not always, but where certain people are at. And so then I can then go, okay, well, today the group that knows a lot can be together and get really immersed into certain concepts where they can just fly. And then other groups who are not there can then go and, refresh or go find something online, or, whatever, text or whatever. So a different group. So everything is kind of flexible and adaptable. But I mean, that's what I'm saying today. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it's a complete failure.
Hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, an adaptable classroom and adaptable resources, especially being very cognizant that everyone learns differently. And they might learn something one way for a certain task, but they might actually be really good at another task a different way. And they couldn't do that way to that task they're good at previously. So there's a lot of things to consider. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
100%. And I really love your consideration in that space, because I'm like, even though you're asking it if that makes sense, I feel like it's probably because you're telling that to an audience that doesn't even actually grapple with the complexity of actually being a facilitator or sharing space with students. So I really appreciate that you're actually, because from what I'm hearing, you're sharing space with students and you're actually guiding them in a way that benefits them, which is student-centered learning, which is I have deep for Kōrero around being like, teach the person in front of you and not your content. Like,
Right.
I love that people can, because I'm like, yo, if a lot of people really, and there's innate narcissism in that, where I'm like, bro, you're really good at your job, you're just not good at transferring your knowledge bases. And those are two different conversations. Like, I'm like, you could be really great researcher and really great lecturer, but maybe your skill set is not transference of knowledge. Your skill set is an acquirance of knowledge, which I think even at university and current teaching levels, we're still talking about that around being like, because I'm like, guys, this is about a transfer. This is not about teaching and like looking at who's the most intelligent. If you're not able to transfer that, what's the point, right? Like,
totally.
Anyways, like, what are you even there for?
But I think the thing is, what I've noticed is some people are really good at breaking down concepts, right? Or like making it really accessible for a range of learners. But others, that doesn't come naturally. And so unless you actually want to strengthen that skill or find that as a valuable skill to have, then the motivation or the incentive to do it isn't really necessarily there. But however, on the other side, we need our researchers, we need our academics that are very discipline specific and experts. But also we need other people to be able to get that wonderful findings or results and package it in a way that students can connect to resonate with, and also not just resonate, but to find purpose for themselves. And I think that's something that's something I've been like really marinating and mulling over since I started teaching.
Love what you do. All right. So I love what you do, and I also want to just bring it back to you in terms of being like, what knowledge do you hold in your body, mind, soul, and heart? I know it's a big concept, but in my head, I'm like, let's bring it back to you. What is the, like, how has knowledge benefited you specifically?
So again, I was been thinking a lot about that, and something that I personally kind of remind myself is that my knowledge, my understanding is a work in progress. And so what I know now isn't what I knew a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. And I'm sure that as I, keep going and spend time with my family and my kids and then my work and all of that, that knowledge keeps morphing into something else that makes sense to me at that time. And so the biggest thing that I hold in my heart is that everything is impermanent. Like, everything changes. So what I hold true, or what the values that I have about knowledge at the moment, I know for a fact it's going to change for me in a year's time or in 5 years' time. And so that sense of like Chishiki, that knowledge, that awareness of that, I need to be flexible and adaptable, and also recognizing, as I was saying before, that I don't know much. And so I need to keep, for me personally, learning to feel that I am nourished, not just in my work, but also as a parent and also as a friend, Yeah. It's like that constant nourishing.
Yeah.
And how long did it get to, like, before you got this comfortable, or if not, how long, what's the journey for you to actually embrace the fact that change is the constant, and that you as a practitioner of life and absorbing all of these awarenesses and all of this knowledges, what was your journey to getting to this specific space where you're actually comfortable to realize that knowledge is flexible, knowledge is adaptable, and also that perhaps what I'm hearing as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you meet knowledge and you meet awareness of what is in front of you in a way that reflects who you are as opposed to what it is.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Like, so I think that with more time and experience, you start making sense of the world. And so, like, I think that there's been a lot of different points in my life up to this point that has made me realize that there are so many things in your life you can't control. And so in that, to relinquish control makes you vulnerable. But in that vulnerability, you really get tested to be like, what can I do? What can I, how can I challenge myself to break through this insecurities or fear of not being in control of things? And so, yeah, like there's just been so many different points. And I think for many of us, I think that the last 2 years has been really, really challenging, of course, for lots of people for a lot of different reasons. And it does come from a place of privilege to say that the pandemic has been a place for spiritual and emotional growth. But that's been my reality, to take a moment to recalibrate and reassess what is important, and that change is change is what we go through, and so seeing like my children being safe, and then how that is the most important thing in my life right now, and that this last 2 years really does put a light on that shift on values. And so that in itself kind of makes everything else make sense to me. And so my children 2 years ago were much younger than they are now, and this kind of being able to see how they have become who they are in that time, and how, because we were in a position to cocoon ourselves and just spend time being a family and just being with each other, that's been like the most important thing in my life so far, is that I can be a witness to their changes, that I'm not so constrained by, commute to work or so many other things. I've been really privileged to still have a full-time job, right? And so, but now as young parents, or not young, but youngish, I get to work from home, and I also have an employer that allows me to be flexible when I get my work done. So now everything has shifted to me being able to do so many things with my kids that I couldn't do 2 years ago,
Love.
And then like they are my teachers now for a lot of things. Like they just, I think we really discredit how much just even babies and infants and toddlers and kids know how much and how wise they can be for where they're at. Like it's mind-blowing. So yeah,
I really total for that.
Yeah,
because to me, I'm like, so before Kelsey asked the next question, I just want to just add like the funniest thing that pops out to mind, and one of my friends said it as a joke, but I actually believe it's true. So they were like saying that babies are born as this like cosmic nobility, and then they dumb themselves down to our frequency as adults and as humans. And I'm like, fuck, that's right. Like, they know everything. And then we're like, no, you have to learn English. Or like, no, you have to learn this, just so that you can coexist in our imaginary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bruv, they're so potent. And especially for vibe checks, I'm like, I already know I'm off if a baby doesn't come close to me. And I'm like,
oh, really?
That's my tohu. If babies and kids are not feeling comfortable to come into my proximity, I know I'm off. I know that I need to get myself right. And that's my I never really share that with people, but since we're in the fuck you capacity, if babies are my best tohu. If they don't want to be around me, it's because I'm not right with the self, or I'm carrying bad vibes, because they check vibes so hard. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I feel so disheartened as well when babies are like, and it usually doesn't happen because I'm a baby bagman. Like, look at me.
You do look like a teddy bear for sure for a baby. They'll be like, come over here.
Wait,
just like that.
That sounded a little bit like something else. Sorry,
different kind of babies.
Oh my gosh.
This
is my life with these two. Oh my gosh. Every time we hang out.
Excuse me, this was your idea. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Be careful what you manifest, my love.
So good though. You're talking about all the things that you've learned over the last 2 years, particularly from your children. I was curious if there were any like standout lessons that you've learned from your children.
Oh my gosh, there's so many standout lessons. So I'm quite like, when I was a kid, I got in trouble a lot, and now it makes sense why I got in trouble a lot, and we can talk about it later. But I pretty much was like all over the place, and I was just in it and stuff, and I got in trouble a lot. So I always kind of had not a good relationship with authority at school and stuff. But so yesterday, so my daughter's telling me about going on the jungle gyms. And so she's like showing me going on the jungle gyms, monkey bars, sorry. And then for whatever reason, she tries to go and she tries to kick me. And I was like, whoa, like, where did that come from? Like, I hope you're not doing this at school. And then she goes, no, if I do this, I'll get told off by the principal. And I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, because, that wouldn't be good to go to the principal. You'd probably be scared or something. And she goes, huh? What? Why would I be scared of the principal? She's lovely. Why would I be scared of her? And I was like, oh.
Wow.
Okay. So I just took a moment. I was like, you know what? Everything I have and that I've learned, or my experience, this is a moment where I don't project. This is a moment where I'm enjoy it, have a great and healthy, lovely relationship with your principal and your teachers. Awesome. Go for gold, but there's a lot of truth bombs like that. Why would I?
Damn, humanity is getting better without me.
Right, pretty much.
I'm not ready for this. I don't want this change. I object.
No, there's moments like that, being get out of the way, stay out of the way, just sit there and observe her and the boy, just watch them make sense of the world, because at the moment they're on track. Yeah.
I'm so thankful to hear that, because I also hear that you're receptible to learning.
Yeah, totally.
And to me, I'm like that as a safety net for anybody. To me, I'm like, I know that is such a healing story for anyone who's, because I feel like everybody. Well, I don't know about everybody, but for me, I'm gonna make this specific. I'm so used to people interjecting their experience that for a long time I thought that was normal. When people are conversing, I thought that was oh, we're sharing, and it's actually no, I'm not actually hearing people's stories when we're sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that part there really, I love hearing that, because I'm like, yes, you are so good at, and I just want to honor you for being receptive to learning as a parent. That's such a different thing. Like for me, hearing that parents are receptive to learning, like let me not project, let me start listen and be thankful that this change has happened.
Yeah, well, see, so that goes into like the frame of reference. So like, you know, how we all make sense of the world, how we filter experiences, and how that informs us, right? So for me, my reference is completely different from how my kids are going to be raised here. And I am trying to acknowledge and be aware of that. There are moments where there's hiccups, where I do project. But that's one thing that I'm like, you know what? Like their whole experience is going to be completely different. They don't have the same parents. They don't have the same background as me. So they're so like, they're just so loving life and learning about life, that as long as we can go on this train of that purity and innocence, let's go on it.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to a place where we need to, you know, because like the one thing I don't want to do is become like those like helicopter parents, or not helicopter, but you know, those parents that shield their kids from everything. And then the kid's like 18 and they don't know how to, you know, balance their books, or, you know, they don't know what things cost, or they don't know how to, you know, walk cautiously at night. All that stuff, right? I don't want to do that. But that balance of like, you know, the reality is there's a lot of things going on in the world. We are completely reminded and bombarded by things. But that's the whole cocoon thing I want to do just right now when they're little, developing their little brains, is that they don't have to compete with those kind of flight and fight responses that others do get by being exposed to things on TV or on social media or whatever. Like, as much as I can, I try to like cocoon that shit until they're in a place where they can process it in a way that they can, and not feel like catastrophic thinking or like things are going to be really bad, you know? Yeah. That's my role right now, I guess.
Where did you learn how to do that? Because you said that that's not your background, that's not how you grew up. So how did that become part of your world?
So my background is like, so I guess for podcast listeners, you probably can't see what I look like, but I'm racially ambiguous. So I'm an other on a government form. So in that way, like I've been able to have lots of different experiences and being a part of things that now I'm extremely grateful to have had. So like when I grew up on a American military base in Japan. But my father wasn't in the military. He was a teacher. So even in that way, we were other. We were already like, oh, you're not in the military. But what are you doing there? So we were there. And then, but being on the base, what's so beautiful about the real amazing thing about the military in the US, which there's a lot of horrible things attributed to it, is really the cross section of society and of America comes all together, and they, for some reason, works for the Department of Defense, military, or some kind of service unit that supports that. So what I mean by that is everyone is from everywhere, or mixed from everywhere. So where I grew up, being we call it, well, there's different ways. So like being Hāfu, which in Japanese means half of something, which some people like and don't like, but that's the term. Or like Hapa, the Hawaiian term for, you know, part. And then we have like, you know, being mixed or whatever. So my whole like life till 18, though it was in the military and quite in different ways conservative, there was a lot of different people with amazing food. So I had that. And then, so that was like my norm and my reality. And then from like being in the military background, I went to a Quaker school when I went to university. So a Quaker school, Quakers are called like the Religious Society of Friends. They are, if you go to, like, they're part of Christianity, but if you go from the left to the right, they're completely on the left. And they're very much about social justice, about equality, and about simplicity, and like trying to build community is like their tenant. So from military fight and like safeguard your resources and protect people, and if they're a threat to you, fight them, to pacifists. So Quakers are pacifists. So when I went into that space, I had to call my professors all by the first name. So in New Zealand, that's common, like to call people their first name. But in that space, from people all about hierarchy, you know, where I lived on the base demonstrated your rank or your class. So you could tell, just as you go on the base, who lives where based on what their parents' ranks are. So being the teacher, we were right in the middle. But when we went to the Quakers, it was like, you know, the brilliant, most smartest person you met, like New Zealand, is wearing no shoes, you know, and like just wearing like holy clothes. And it's like, so, not what are you, like, who are you, Leslie? Yeah. Why do you think this way? And then it was like the first time in my life being like, what? Who am I? And so with their, like, that environment, it allowed me to really start kind of unpacking different layers of myself and different identities, which was in the result of a lot of identity crisis, because being in the military surrounding, it was really, really normal to be, a biracial kid. But then I went into even a real liberal space, and that there wasn't really wasn't that biracial environment, you know, all of that stuff. So I think I'm kind of rambling, but pretty much what I went through there was kind of like that was like the first real time in my life to start grappling with what are inherent values, who shapes those, how can I make my own, and like what is the what for me? It's like, is it being successful? Is it having all of these material resources and to show my wealth in front of people, or indicate that by what I wear and what I dress? And I knew that wasn't for me. But before that was more the value for a lot of people of like, how do you, mobilize up the social hierarchy and your economic status, and how do you become rich or whatever. But the Quakers allowed me to kind of start thinking about what makes me tick, really. And so from there, I just kind of, and then like knowing I was queer, but since I was a baby, like probably, just being in love with my teachers or sisters, friends, older friends and stuff, coming to a place where I still didn't feel that I could come out when I was in college. And so what I think a lot of people my age at that time that didn't feel safe to come out was to leave, right, and go and travel and work overseas and all of that stuff. And so in that, I started kind of developing a sense of like self and priorities and what makes me tick and all of that. And I still, it's a work in progress. And also depending on the time of day, or did I have enough things to eat, or did I sleep, those things really do swing on my like best self of the day. But I think I'm now come to a place of like, just reconciling some things that I felt like I didn't do right, or I wasn't successful enough, or all that stuff, to a place of like, my kids are healthy, I'm healthy, and
Yeah.
Wow, that was a ramble. Sorry.
No, I love that. I was along the ride the whole way.
Yeah, so that's where I am now.
Mm.
Yeah. But it's been like a real, like, I have moments where I'm like, I can't really, because I want to build, or I want to be with people, you want to be with people who get you to your core, and you want to bounce ideas, but I get to a place sometimes that I'm like, I'm such an other that no one gets me. But then I'm like, that's not true. They do get parts of you, and like, do you fully get yourself either? Like Malu and I was saying, do you really fully even understand yourself? And you're like, not so much. So like, why do you expect
someone else
have
to
these set of someone else to? So
I'm so big on that. I'm so big with that, because in my head I'm like, that is so unrealistic for me to expect other people to get to know me, and I'm like, bitch, I will never.
I think that's also really common.
And see, this is
really common in like romantic relationships, like expecting a partner to be your one person for everything. But how can you be all of that for someone? And
I think that's ridiculous though, because like, if you flip it on yourself and you're dating yourself, like, could you expect yourself to do everything? Like, never. Like, I could never date myself. Could you guys date yourself? No. I'd be like, oh, you're a little bit.
Girl, I'm like this. You and your fluctuation between all of the personalities you're carrying, you're done. I'm done with you, and you're done.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't.
So that's the thing. Like, it's so interesting how you get like trapped in those kind of expectations. I think that's a lot of things that we learned, or we through like watching all of this horrible stuff.
Conditioned. It's conditioned.
We're conditioned, right? But
for sure.
And saying that, I do feel like my partner is a bit more like gives me more and like much more like of a, she's much more together than me in that sense. So thank you, darling.
Love you.
Love you.
I just want to jump back a little bit. You talked about your inherent values and how they shifted from what you were taught on the military base to the Quaker school, and where you got to develop some of your own. I'm curious if you are currently in a position where you can articulate what your inherent values are now, and if they've changed in like the last 2 years, where you've talked about being like in that little cocoon with your children and your family.
So inherent values. This wasn't a part of your prompt, Kelsey. I didn't do homework for this, but so like I love I'm obsessed with Maya Angelou. Like, she's really given me a lot of clarity and like a perspective, and also for like perseverance. And so I think for the value is like, for me, with everything that I try to do is, do the best you can until when you know better, do better.
That's
right. And that's just kind of like, maybe that's not a value, but that makes sense to me about everything, you know? Oh, thank you. I feel it.
turning off. You are hard. No, because literally, this is the weirdest part. Is that saying has been ringing in my ear the whole day, and I'm like, this moment. It was ringing for this moment specifically, because I'm like, I fuck with that so much. Because I'm like, guys, there's a lot of us that know better that don't do actually fucking better.
Yeah. No, I mean, right? Because, like, again, so much shit has gone down the last 2-3 years, like so much, and yet there are certain things that people have become really adaptive, and then there's other things that I'm like, haven't we learned the lesson here? There's a lesson to be learned, and so why are we doing the same things expecting different results? Like,
because the lesson's going to keep coming until you've learned it.
So yeah, you know. So I think
it makes sense.
Yeah. Another, I guess, inherent value. So I really crave and I gravitate to like intergenerational kōrero. Like I really love that I have some friends from all different ages. There's so much to learn. Like. Hi guys. Like, you keep me young. Yes. Anyway. But it's so true. And so, like, to intentionally be with people, oh my goodness. You need a moment?
I can't. Intentionally be with people.
No, but, you know, being with people, not just your own, like, backgrounds or, like, what you know or what you get stuck into, you know? And, like, even with, like, so, like, I love to be, like, I don't like other people's kids. I'll just put that out there in the world. Like, people think that you're a parent and then all of a sudden you, like, inherit this gene that you love all kids. But
no.
I do love kids from a certain age bracket. And my like golden age bracket of kids typically is from 6 to 9. They're the coolest people on earth for me. And also the age bracket of like 70 beyond. And it doesn't happen often, but whenever that age bracket and myself or some other people who are just randomly happen to be there, or with also 70 to 80, that interaction for me is just
juice.
Yeah, because it just really reshifts and like really prioritizes what's the most important thing, and that is just sharing and being with one another from different, you know, time, and to share knowledge, really share like what you think, what's important and what's funny and all of that stuff, and going on walks and someone pointing out different things about trees and the birds, and like everyone sharing what they know about it. It's just for me, it rejuvenates me. I love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. I'm really loving all of that.
Okay.
So
like,
good. That's me. Those two inherent values. Like, I miss living in an intergenerational house, because for me, when I think about an when I remember, not so much when I think, when I remember living in an intergenerational house, there was always someone to catch you, and that's an added layer of pastoral care that we don't get the safety of in this atomic families or in these like siloed individualistic like pursuits of like professionalism and all of these things. You're flattening by yourself, and I'm like, guys, who benefits when you're siloed and no one catches you? Who benefits? And I'm like, it's really, it's a beautiful thing. And I feel like there's a time and a space for us to be individuals and to go and find our own voice and to go and find our autonomy and self-determination and mana motu haki. And also it's like, when do people come home? Because I'm like, people just keep on going and going and going.
Yeah.
And then parents get sick, and it's like, oh my God, I have to change my whole life around. And I'm like, oh, I get it, but it's like, maybe it's because you didn't bring all of your peoples with you. to the space or to the room. And that's a call out for me. And that's a call in for me, sorry. Because in my head, I'm like, if my family's responsibilities feel like weight, it's because I've gone too far from home and what's real for me.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like that grounding, eh?
But I want to ask as well, so coming off to our final question, what is the archive for you? What is high up in your high security vault? What is in your whāki specifically around knowledge?
Damn.
Or another way to say this is, what are we not talking about when or what in your perspective and your experience, your sensory experience of this world and the realm that you live in? What are we not talking about when we're thinking about knowledge or feeling about knowledge?
I don't know. I just think about like the access to knowledge and like who gets knowledge and how that can mobilize you or not, or how certain things that has that's inflicted on you, or that you have made a decision, and that kind of just shapes your trajectory of your life, and how there's like these parallel alternate realities, right? Like if you did this or you studied this and you went here or you met this person, everything changes. And so for me, like the realization that when I was younger and some of the mistakes that I made, I never got caught, right? And so I like to acknowledge that, to be like, what is it about my life and the way that I am currently living that I'm able to have a life of comfort, of being like middle class and all that stuff. But if the things that I did when I was younger and I did get caught, where would I be now? And so I like to always think of that with my students or with my interactions with people, and being like, we can't say someone is like this because of this. I think that so many things occurred to get to that place where we're at. And so to really acknowledge that, of like, what is it about those layers of access, layers of the ability to make mistakes, and then others who can't make mistakes. I think that's something,
Love. I've never heard it from that perspective before. And also I'm feeling into how this correlates with Chimamanda Ngozi's perspectives on the dangers of a single story, and how one story should never be the sum of any person, community, like society, or knowledge in general. So it's like that perspective adds value to that body of knowledge, but shouldn't be the sum of that knowledge. And that to me is something that I really value in what you just said. And you've just really uplifted that from a personal perspective, because I feel like you've literally highlighted of being like, how is that, like, how is one person's narrative of you the totality of you, or that cause and effect of being like, oh, I've witnessed violence here, so violence is here. And I'm like, that's storytelling, which we all do, but I feel like this humility that is invited when you're trying to perpetuate that one single narrative of that person or that community or that society.
Like 100%. Like that's just, I mean, there's been so many times like, oh, that person is from here, so they're like this, or like they can't do this, or they're not able to do it, and you're like, who says, and why not? Like, why have we made that decision, and why are we now, being gatekeepers when now there's opportunity, and let's just, if we have the time and those kind of resourcing, whatever, let's just see, and then some might flourish, some might not, but why not? I just feel like there's moments where certain decisions are made, and then like that opportunity is locked down, and yet there's many of us who are allotted more you know, what's this word, like legway, more
Leeway.
freedoms to leeway. Thank you, leeway to figure things out more.
It could be leeway.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, and in honoring everything that you've just shared with us today, if people and some, I know that a lot of people will already resonate with your racial ambiguity, and this is something that I feel like that is a FAQ conversation in general, because it's like the othering of that is just, and because that's the single narratives, right? And it's like, okay, we understand the single narratives of what race and identity is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do we? Do we? Because it's not reflected in our policies. It's not reflected in our documentations. And I'm like, do we? Or are we perpetuating this othering? But that's another different story.
Yes.
What I wanted to say is, if people wanted to get in touch with you because they resonate with you, your story and the way that you offered it today, how are they best to do
that? They can contact you guys.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
that's cool. I love that.
Yeah, so
right?
flick us a message or DM or whatever, and we'll screen them for you. Like, no.
Well, I mean, now that you guys told me you knew me for 2 years before we actually met, like, that screening process would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were screening ourselves to be like, okay, how do we find it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you want to offer into this moment in terms of the FAQ kaupapa? And thank you so much for sharing your worldviews and your lived experiences. Because I'm like, yo, we really appreciate it. But is there anything else that you'd like? Any final words?
Yeah, one thing I didn't mention is the importance of breaking bread with people and breaking bread with people you don't know, and the power of sharing food around a table. That really just opens up so many opportunities. So I think that's where I want to end it. Share your kai.
Oh,
love.
Yes. All right, we started with the jingle, so we're going to end with the jingle. Please jingle with us.
Let me get ready.
Are you ready? Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please. Celine Dion me this moment, please.
Oh, okay.
Pressure. Here we go.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Kia ora, fam. See you later. Bye.
Bye.